In October 1929, the lights of Wall Street flickered. Traders shouted, tickers jammed, and paper fortunes evaporated in seconds. By the time the closing bell rang, America's decade of roaring confidence had ended in stunned silence. But the Great Depression wasn't just a market crash. It was a systemic implosion of money itself. For the first time, ordinary citizens realized that wealth printed on paper could vanish overnight. And that trust, not gold, was the true backbone of an economy. In the 1920s, America had become the world's creditor. Europe owed it billions after the First World War. The gold standard tied currencies together in a fragile web. Everyone assumed the system was eternal. But beneath the optimism, the world's finances were a tower of leverage, easy credit, speculative stocks, and unregulated banks all feeding on each other. When the bubble burst, it wasn't just Wall Street that fell. It was the entire global financial order built since the late 1800s. Factories went dark. Farmers lost land. Unemployment hit 25%. But the real earthquake came in the collapse of confidence. In banks, in governments, in money itself. The Great Depression shattered a century-long belief in self-regulating markets. From its ashes would rise central planning, social safety nets, and an entirely new conception of what money meant. It wasn't just an economic collapse. It was a monetary revolution, one that quietly rewired the entire global system. For centuries, gold had been money's anchor, unchanging, incorruptible. But the Depression exposed its fatal flaw. It limited government's ability to respond. When banks failed, people rushed to exchange paper for gold. Gold drained from vaults, starving credit and deepening the collapse. Politicians faced an impossible choice: protect gold or protect people. In 1933, Franklin Roosevelt made his decision. He closed America's banks, outlawed private gold ownership, and devalued the dollar. The gold standard, the symbol of monetary discipline, was dead. Across the world, nations followed. Britain had already left gold in 1931, triggering a domino effect that broke the system built in the 19th century. Currencies began to float. Trade collapsed, and every country tried to save itself by devaluing faster than the next. But Roosevelt's move was more than emergency policy. It was philosophical rebellion. For the first time, government asserted the right to create and manage money to serve the economy, not the other way around. Money became a tool of policy, not a fixed measure of value. From that moment on, the question wasn't, how much gold backs our currency? It was, how much faith backs our government? That shift, invisible at first, would reshape the entire 20th century. In the ruins of depression, a Cambridge economist named John Maynard Keynes offered a radical idea. Markets were not self-correcting. Governments had to step in. For centuries, classical economists preached restraint. Deficits were sins, and balanced budgets were sacred. Keynes broke the taboo. In depression, he argued, the government must spend when others cannot. It was more than economics. It was moral inversion. Instead of fearing debt, nations learned to use it as medicine. Public works, jobs programs, and infrastructure spending became the tools of recovery. Roosevelt's New Deal became Keynesianism in action. Dams, bridges, electrification, all funded by government credit. The U.S. deficit grew, but so did hope. Across the Atlantic, Britain and France followed suit. The invisible hand had failed. Now the visible hand would rebuild. Keynes understood something his predecessors didn't. In modern economies, money wasn't metal. It was trust, belief, circulation. When people stop spending, the system freezes. The solution wasn't austerity. It was confidence, engineered through public investment. His ideas would dominate global policy for the next 40 years, redefining capitalism itself. While America experimented with recovery, other nations turned inward. In Germany, unemployment and hyperinflation paved the road for authoritarian promises. Hitler's regime fused nationalism with economic planning. Debt-financed rearmament, massive infrastructure, and controlled labor. Economic despair became political opportunity. In Italy and Japan, similar patterns emerged. The state took command of credit and production. Capitalism, socialism, and fascism all learned the same depression lesson. Whoever controls money controls destiny. Global trade collapsed by 2/3. Tariffs rose. Each country built its own fortress economy. But behind the scenes, financial elites searched for stability, a new order that could prevent the next collapse. They found the answer in the concept of managed money, currencies guided by governments, balanced by international coordination. Ironically, the economic nationalism born from the Depression would later evolve into the foundations of globalism itself. World War II wasn't just fought with weapons. It was financed with an entirely new monetary logic. Governments borrowed on unprecedented scales. Central banks printed money to fund total mobilization. Deficits that once terrified economists became a patriotic duty. By 1944, as victory loomed, the Allies met in a small New Hampshire resort called Bretton Woods to design a post-war financial order. Keynes was there, as was the U.S. Treasury's Harry Dexter White. Their goal: prevent another depression, another currency war. The outcome was revolutionary. The dollar would anchor the system, convertible to gold at $35 an ounce. All other currencies would peg to the dollar. The IMF and World Bank would oversee global liquidity and reconstruction. It was a compromise between gold's discipline and paper's flexibility, a hybrid that would sustain growth for 3 decades. But it also placed the world's trust squarely in the hands of the United States. For the first time, money had a headquarters. From 1945 to 1971, the world lived under the illusion of stability. The Bretton Woods system created predictable exchange rates, booming trade, and rising prosperity. But beneath the calm, imbalances grew. America printed more dollars than it had gold to back. Europe and Japan rebuilt and began demanding redemption. Gold flowed out of Fort Knox, echoing the panic of 1933. The same old problem returned. The world wanted certainty, but trusted paper. In 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's gold convertibility. Just like that, Bretton Woods collapsed, and the age of fiat money began. The Depression had killed gold once. Nixon buried it for good. From then on, money became entirely faith-based, floating on government promises and central bank policies. Credit expanded faster than production. Wealth inflated. Inequality widened. But growth never stopped. The Great Depression had taught policymakers that collapsing demand is fatal. So they vowed never to let it happen again, even if it meant endless debt. The Great Depression didn't just reshape economies, it redefined power. Before 1929, markets ruled nations. After 1945, nations ruled markets. And today, central banks rule both. The lessons learned in that collapse still govern every crisis response. When demand falls, print. When credit freezes, intervene. When confidence fades, flood the system with liquidity. Each emergency since 2008, 2020 has been a modern echo of 1929. The tools are newer, the numbers bigger, but the logic the same. The Depression taught the world that money is not wealth. It's a system of control, a lever for policy, a mirror of collective psychology. It transformed governments into guardians of confidence, economists into high priests, and central banks into the unseen architects of stability. But every solution carries a seed of its next crisis. Unlimited money breeds unlimited risk. The more the system relies on intervention, the more fragile it becomes. The Great Depression ended 90 years ago, yet its shadow still stretches over every paycheck, every interest rate, every market move. It didn't just reshape money, it created the world we live in. If this gave you a new perspective, click subscribe. History has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.